You ever wonder how just one geographical feature can completely shape the destiny of an entire subcontinent? Well, for India, the answer is right there in the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean. If there's one thing you take away from this, let it be this. India's ultimate fate wasn't decided by invaders coming through the mountains, but by fleets on the water. So let's dive into how this single body of water has really shaped a nation's destiny.
This is some powerful advice from a 16th century admiral to his sultan, and it's pretty much the central idea of the entire story we're exploring today. And really, it's a timeless rule of power, and as we're about to see, no country's history illustrates it more starkly than India's.
We often think about India's history in terms of invasions from the land, right? Through those legendary mountain passes in the northwest. But the real game changers, the conquests that truly cost India its independence, they didn't come from the land at all. Nope, they came from the sea.
Okay, so to really get this, we have to challenge that traditional view of history. It all boils down to what we can call the ocean's iron rule. This completely reframes everything. On the one hand, you've got the traditional view, right? It's all about land invasions through places like the Khyber Pass. But the argument we're digging into here says something completely different. It says, yeah, those land invasions brought new dynasties, but those dynasties eventually became Indian. The country never really truly lost its independence until it lost command of the sea in the early 1500s. The Indian Ocean, not the Hindu Kush Mountains, became the key to its fate.
But before everything changed, before that huge loss, there was this long, prosperous era, a time when India really did rule the waves.
See, for centuries, the Indian Ocean wasn't this big battlefield. It was more like a superhighway for trade and culture. And for the most part, it was Indian powers who were the navigators. The Chola dynasty, for instance, was a major naval force. We're talking about Hindu mariners so skilled they set up colonies way across the sea in places like Sumatra and Java. And get this, in Indian naval power, the Srivijaya Empire actually controlled the super important Malacca Straits for 500 years. And the key principle behind all this, total freedom of trade for everyone. The seas were open for business.
And then everything changed. Just like that, a few small ships show up from Europe, and they didn't just bring new traders. They brought what you can only describe as a new kind of war.
So, when Vasco da Gama rolls up to Calicut in 1498, it's not the size of his ships that's the big deal. It's what they were carrying, heavy guns. And that was a sign, a huge omen for what was coming. See, the Portuguese weren't there to just join in on the trade. They were there to take it over, and they came armed with this radical, violent idea backed by a papal bull, straight from the Pope.
And this claim, it was completely alien to how things had worked in the Indian Ocean for, well, forever. The Portuguese just declared themselves the lords of the sea. They honestly believed they had a monopoly, a God-given right to control all the shipping lanes and just take the goods of anyone who sailed without their say-so. The age of free trade? Over. The age of fighting over the sea for profit? It had just begun.
This new idea was put into action with absolute ruthless genius by one man, Afonso D. Albuquerque, and his formula? It became the literal blueprint for every European empire in Asia for the next 400 years. Step 1. Take over the strategic naval choke points, the gateways to the ocean. Step 2. Set up a central, untouchable naval base right in India, which he did by conquering Goa. And Step 3. Use that whole network to enforce total control over the sea. It was brilliant, it was brutal, and we are still feeling the consequences of it today.
So once Albuquerque builds this incredible system, it instantly becomes the ultimate prize, and that kicks off this centuries-long multinational brawl to control it. This was the fight for the prize. And man, for the next 250 years, the Indian Ocean was anything but peaceful. It basically turned into a global war zone. Everybody, from other European powers to local forces trying to make a comeback, fought tooth and nail to take over that powerful system Portugal had created.
And this struggle was so complex, with so many players jumping into the ring. First, you have Portugal, right? The pioneers. But their power eventually fizzled out as their luck changed back home. Then in come the Dutch, super focused on commerce, and they just start snatching up key Portuguese spots like Malacca and Ceylon. But then you also get this amazing comeback of Indian naval power with the Marathas. They put up a fierce fight in the coastal waters, but just couldn't project that power way out into the ocean. And the French, they were a serious threat for a while, led by a naval genius. But in the end, it was the British. With their massive Atlantic fleet and just superior resources, they systematically knocked out every rival and took the whole thing. And all of that brings us to the final outcome of this long, bloody fight, an era of such total dominance that the Indian Ocean pretty much stopped being an ocean. It became something else entirely, a British lake.
And the thing is, Britain didn't just take over Albuquerque's system. They perfected it. They took it global. By controlling every single strategic gateway, the Cape of Good Hope, Ceylon, Malacca, and the brand new port of Singapore, their authority was absolute. There were no back doors, no secret passages. The entire ocean was on lockdown.
Just think about that number for a second. 157 years. From 1784 all the way to 1941, British rule over the Indian Ocean wasn't just on top, it was completely, totally, 100% unchallenged.
And the psychological effect of this, it was huge. As the historian K.M. Panikkar wrote, for more than a century and a half, the very idea of sea power in the Indian Ocean just wasn't a thing people talked about. British control was so complete, so total, it just became a fact of life, as natural and as normal as the air we breathed.
But that era, the age of the British lake, is absolutely over. The game board has been reset. So the question this whole history leaves us with is this. In the 21st century, with new powers rising, new alliances forming, who is going to control the Indian Ocean next? And what on earth will that mean for the fate of India?